America is Under Attack by Don Brown, Part 2. Stanley Primnath saw the second jet race straight at his 81st floor office in the South Tower. He dived under his desk, screaming. Everything exploded. Walls and ceilings collapsed. Part of the jet's wing jammed into a door. The overpowering stink of jet fuel made breathing difficult, but Primnath was alive, the only survivor at the heart of the impact. The second jetliner had crashed through the 77th to 85th floors of the South Tower. Massive flames spewed from the tower. Wreckage rained down on the street. It was 9:03 a.m., 17 minutes after the strike on the North Tower. People now understood the earlier crash was not a freak accident, but a deliberate attack. Despite the horrific crash, one stairwell in the South Tower remained intact. Unlike the North Tower, people above the crash had the means to escape to the street. In the chaos, however, many people would not find it. Firefighters scrambling into the South Tower discovered a working elevator that carried them to the 40th floor. From there, they climbed a stairwell. Passing them on the way down were escaping civilians. The lack of panic by the civilians impressed the firefighters. People patted the firefighters' backs and wished them well. In return, the firefighters encouraged them for their long flight down. Below, one elevator screeched to a halt at the building's main lobby. It had plunged 900 feet before automatic safety brakes stopped it. The riders pried the doors open and escaped. In the North Tower, another elevator sat stalled and locked, closed at the lobby. It had come to a halt when the plane struck. Chris Young, its lone occupant, knew nothing of the catastrophe around him. Firefighters couldn't hear his shouts and marched past him unaware of his predicament. High above was another trapped elevator. From its intercom, riders learned that there had been an explosion. Riders were forced open the doors and discovered they had stopped in front of a wall. One of the passengers was a window washer. He began scratching the wall with the metal edge of his squeegee to make a hole. Dense smoke billowed off both towers. Falling wreckage hurtled to the ground. Despite the risk, hundreds of firefighters, police, emergency medical technicians, private security guards, and even workers from the neighboring hotel stationed themselves around the World Trade Center, tending to the injured and helping office workers flee. To avoid the debris raining down on the plaza outside the tower, they directed evacuees through the neighboring buildings or through underground corridors. Thousands streamed away. At 9:37 a.m., 200 miles away from the disaster zones in New York, the military's headquarters in Washington, D.C., known as the Pentagon, became the third target of the hijackers' attack. The jet swooped low and plowed into the building at ground level. The flaming impact nearly reached the center courtyard. It was a loud roar. The building shook. Jet fuel poured into the corridors and ignited, taking all of the oxygen out of the air, said an army officer. The heat inside was so hot it felt like the sun was kissing you, said a soldier. Rescuers raced to the scene. From exits everywhere, 20,000 people eventually evacuated the building. Back in New York, in the wreckage of the South Tower, Stanley Primnath yelled, "Help! Help! I'm buried! Is anybody there?" Brian Clark was there. He had been fleeing his ruined office when he heard the shouts. Clark and Primnath clawed through the rubble. Clark yanked the trapped man free, and the two fell into the floor with a hug. "I'm Brian," Clark said. "I'm Stanley," Primnath said. The two men found a stairwell and headed down. Thousands of people escaped down the tower's stairwells. The injured, the old, the handicapped were helped by friends and strangers. People shared drinks. A blind man came down with his guide dog. Two brothers trudged the stairwells, one a firefighter going up, the other a businessman coming down. They didn't meet. Not on the stairs were co-workers Ed B.A. and Abe Zelmanwith. B.A. was paralyzed and in a wheelchair. There wasn't an elevator for him to escape. Zelmanwith waited with his friend for rescue. They were eventually joined by Fire Captain William Burke. Together, the three waited for available rescue workers to carry B.A. down. At 10 a.m., lines of firefighters stretched all the way to the 54th floor in the North Tower. At the same time, in the South Tower, one hard-charging chief made it all the way to the impact zone on the 78th floor. Chief Oreo Palmer used the elevator to travel 40 stories, then raced up 38 flights of stairs on foot. Hundreds of miles away, another kind of desperate action unfolded. The fourth hijacked plane was still in the air, creasing the Pennsylvania sky. By the way of cell phone calls to the ground, passengers learned of the attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. The passengers decided to fight back. They stormed the cockpit. The hijacker pilot pitched and banked the plane to throw the passengers off balance. At 10:03 a.m., the jet rolled onto its back and roared earthward. The passengers were still battling when the plane smashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, in New York, molten aluminum poured from the South Tower as the remains of the jetliner melted. Watching the disaster was a city building engineer, one of the many government officials who had rushed to the scene. Surveying the damage, he warned the fire department commanders that the tower was close to collapsing. The warning came too late. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower came down. In 10 seconds, the mammoth building was reduced to rubble. It looked exactly like an avalanche coming down the street at you, a policeman said. It cleaved a neighboring hotel in two. Cars flew through the air. Giant steel girders tumbled like toothpicks. We saw air conditioning ducts. We saw parts of buildings and newspapers and debris all in a dust ball coming at us, said a police captain.